Hello there, fearfully and wonderfully made human. It's me, Diana, from Through the Valley Therapy on the Holistic Counselor podcast. I'm so glad you're tuning in for this solo episode today. Recently, I've had quite a few conversations with friends and colleagues, which inspired today's topic. As we approach the last week of August, I find myself reflecting on what it means to step out in faith, to start something new, and to push past the fears and excuses that often hold us back. Whether you're an intern just starting out, a therapist considering launching your own blog, podcast, or private practice, someone thinking about moving into coaching, or even a listener who's never been to therapy but feels the nudge, this episode is for you. Today, I want to share a bit of my own journey, offer some practical encouragement, and challenge you to take that next step. But I also want to speak to your heart, because if you're anything like me, you might be feeling some resistance. Maybe it's fear, doubt, or even just uncertainty about where to start. I've been there. I'm still there sometimes. And I want to help you navigate that journey, just as I've been navigating mine. So grab a cup of tea with me or whatever helps you feel grounded, and let's dive in. Let me take you back to last November. I was in a place where many of you might find yourselves, thinking about change, feeling that nudge in my spirit, but not entirely sure what it would lead or where it would lead. I just moved my practice online, which was a big change in itself. But there was something else staring in me, something that said, there's more for you to do. I spent time in prayer, seeking stillness, and what came up was this idea of starting a blog, Liberation Lunes. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I didn't just start the blog to help with SEO or to get myself out there, although those things were certainly part of it. I also started learning about AI and how it could help streamline my process, making things easier and allow me to reach more people. But the deeper reason, I realized that I'm just one person and I want to help as many people as I can. With over 53 years of life experience and 2 decades in the mental health field, I've gathered a lot of wisdom. So why not share it freely? Starting Liberation Lunas wasn't easy, and it wasn't something I ever imagined I'd be doing. I had doubts. I wondered if anyone would read it, if it would make a difference, or if I was just setting myself up for failure. But then I thought about the people I could help, the people who might be searching for the very things I've learned over the years. And that pushed me forward. Then in February of this year, I took another leap of faith and launched this podcast. The inspiration, my soul sister, Sharon. Shout out to you, Sharon, who started her podcast, This Beautiful, Ugly, Still Here, Now What? With Dr. Deb, back in February 2022. Watching Sharon's faith and courage as she walked through one of the darkest seasons of her life, sorry guys, moved me deeply. Seeing how the Lord was using her as a vessel showed me the power of sharing your story and experiences, no matter how difficult they may be. I still recommend Sharon and Dr. Deb's podcast to those who have lost loved ones because it's a source of comfort and healing. And fun fact, This Beautiful Ugly was the first podcast I was ever on. After that experience, I started wondering, can I really do this? What if I fail? I've started things in the past that I never finished, often because I was afraid of failing or felt I didn't have the time, energy, or resources to see them through. I've put myself out there before, and sometimes it felt like no one cared or was inspired by what I did. Working with numerous artists, I've seen the same fear come up again and again. The fear of not being known, heard, or understood. But then again, isn't that a part of life? So I became hooked on learning how to blog and eventually how to podcast. I absolutely love creating, and both of these outlets are incredibly therapeutic for me. Knowing that even one person might become better by reading or listening to the content I create makes all the difference. Failing is inevitable, but it's not something to be feared. We must go through the valleys in order to truly appreciate the mountaintops. By the end of December 2023, I took the leap of faith to start my own blog, and then in February of this year, my podcast. In the 53 years I've been here on this earth, I've learned that what we often label as failure is actually where growth happens the most. We need what we call failure to learn and become mature in our journey. Failing is part of life. If we succeeded at everything, we'd become egotistical, entitled souls, placing ourselves on a pedestal as our own God. Remember that pride comes before the fall, and it is the intention of our hearts that matters the most. I'm sharing all of this not to toot my own horn, but to motivate you just to do it. I know it's scary. Sometimes people will judge you. Hello, trolls. When I wrote my two poetry books, Wrath to Riches, Justice to Gems, and Anima Resuscitation between 2020 and 2022, I felt so alone in the process. Wrath to Riches, Justice to Gems was published in 2023, and Anima Resuscitation was just published a few months ago. Is it on the New York Times bestseller list? No. Is that my goal? No. My goal is to leave a legacy of pointing to Christ in all I do and leave behind something that helps at least one soul. Many people didn't understand. They judged and would negatively comment. But what I've learned is that if the Lord has called you to it, He will see you through it. That is, if your intentions are for the greater good and not just to stroke your own ego. If moving forward towards something is about becoming rich and famous, then you may want to analyze why. Why are those things so important to you? Is what you want to accomplish all about you? You better check yourself before you wreck yourself, as the saying goes. Believe me, I'm preaching to myself, and that is why my faith is so important in every decision I make. Not because I am perfect, but because I know how imperfect I am, and I need daily guidance to step out of ego and be in the light. But here's the truth. We have two choices: to live in faith or to live in fear. It's up to you to choose. So let me ask you this. What's holding you back? What's that thing deep down that's stopping you from taking that first step? Is it fear, doubt, or maybe it's something more practical like time or money? Well, let's break this down together. Is it the time excuse? You might be thinking, I just don't have the time right now. But here's the truth. We make time for what we prioritize. What if you dedicated just 15 minutes a day to your new goal? Over time, those small increments can lead to significant progress. Imagine what you could accomplish in a month, 6 months, or even a year if you just started with 15 minutes a day. Is it the money excuse? And I get it. Nowadays, it's pretty hard, but you may be worried about the financial investment. Whether it's starting a business, a new project, or even going to therapy, there's often a cost involved. But think about the cost of not pursuing it. What opportunities are you missing out by staying in your comfort zone? Sometimes the biggest cost is the regret of never trying. These are common barriers, and they often stem from cognitive distortions, those automatic negative thoughts that can keep us stuck. But here's the good news. You can challenge and change these thoughts using principles from cognitive behavioral therapy. Can you tell I'm a CBT therapist? All right, let's try to apply some of those right now. Identify the thought. Start by pinpointing the exact thought that's holding you back. Maybe it's, I don't have enough time, or I can't afford this. Examine the evidence. Ask yourself, is this thought really true? For example, if you believe you don't have time, look at how you're spending your days. Is there a way to reallocate your time? If it's about money, consider the potential long-term benefits versus the initial cost. Is there a way to start small and build up? Kind of like stop doom scrolling, because sometimes we spend hours on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and we could actually be using that time to try to reach our goals? And are we going to Starbucks every day, spending $5 on a latte? Maybe cut back a little and use that money for your goals of what you're trying to accomplish. Anyway, reframe the thought. Instead of saying, I don't have time, reframe it to, I can find time if I make this a priority. Or if it's about money, reframe it. So instead of saying, I can't afford this, to, investing in this now can lead to greater rewards later. These small shifts in thinking can open up new possibilities. Take action. Now that you've challenged your thought, take a small actionable step. Maybe it's setting aside 15 minutes a day to work on your goal, or researching budget-friendly ways to start your project or therapy. The key is to move from thought to action. Don't get stuck in the planning phase. Take that first step, no matter how small. Remember, these thoughts and excuses are just that, thoughts and excuses. And you also need to remember feelings aren't facts, and they ebb and flow. They don't have to control your actions. You have the power to change your mindset and take that first step. So, what's your next move? What can you do today to challenge those thoughts and take a step forward? If you're feeling that nudge to start something new, consider this your sign. I'm here to give you the motivation to begin. And if you're a listener who needs a guide or a therapist, I have a few spots open. So let's set up that free 15-minute consultation, but that's only if you're in Florida. Okay. Anyway, if you're not quite ready for therapy, but want to stay connected and receive ongoing support, I encourage you to sign up for my blog, Liberation Lunes. Every Monday, I share insights, tips, and encouragement to help you navigate life's challenges. The link to sign up will be in the show notes, but I think I might have said that already. Oh, well. Starting something new is always daunting, but it's also incredibly rewarding. Don't let fear or excuses hold you back any longer. Take that step, embrace the journey, and trust that you are capable of more than you know. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode has given you the encouragement and motivation you need to start something new, whether it's a blog, a podcast, a private practice, a new business, a new adventure, or even just taking that first step into therapy. Whatever the Lord is placing on your heart, just do it. You won't regret it. Don't forget to check the show notes for the links to This Beautiful Ugly, where I made my first podcast appearance, and sign up for my blog, okay? And remember, if you're ready to take that first step or that next step, I'm here to walk with you. Let's set that 15-minute consultation up and get started on your journey to growth and healing. And have a wonderful day. Don't forget, trust in the Lord, guard your heart, and renew your mind. Bye. And now for the disclaimer to make sure you understand that you are responsible for you. The content provided on the Holistic Counselor podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical or mental condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The views expressed on this podcast are my personal opinions and do not represent the views of any professional organizations with which I am affiliated. Call your doctor, 911, or 988 immediately if you have a medical emergency. The Holistic Counselor podcast does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the podcast. Reliance on any information provided by the Holistic Counselor podcast, guests appearing on the podcast at the invitation of the Holistic Counselor podcast, or other listeners to the podcast is solely at your own risk. Confidentiality notice. If you engage with the Holistic Counselor podcast by commenting or posting and are a client, please be aware that you may be revealing information that could compromise your confidentiality. Please remember that disclosing your identity or personal details can be linked to your clinical material. As a therapist, I am bound by confidentiality and will not respond to any disclosures of this type on this podcast. I am committed to upholding the ethics and confidentiality of the therapeutic relationship, which extends to all forms of communication in accordance with the laws and professional guidelines that govern mental health professionals. I want you to know that your privacy is of utmost importance, and you are responsible for protecting it when interacting on this platform or any other public forum. Thank you.